It's noteworthy. It's noteworthy that the best joke of the night is the worst joke, which does not even intend to be funny. So,
well, that's the postmodernist irony, man.
It's
like what you interpret as reality, man, is like whatever, man.
Let's let the ruckus begin.
Let's let the ruckus begin. Let's let the happy hour begin. Dennis, my man.
Hey,
how I've heard you've been. Nothing is more fun than reinstalling Windows. I know, as an IT person, but you've been up to. You got the joke. It's a joke. Yeah.
Well, I reconditioned them, so I didn't replace them. But because the underlying structure of the wood was sound, I needed to just clean them up well. Any rotting board replaced, which was very little, and a little wood putty, some caulk, and 8 coats of paint.
Damn, that's a lot of paint.
But not all on the same surface. So
you don't even wear 8 coats in winter in Michigan, do you?
No, I don't. You got it. Here's the thing: coats are like paint.
Coats are like paint.
The better the
layers,
coat, the fewer you need.
That's so true, man.
So because I'm using a paint product that comparatively is second shelf and costs appropriately second shelf, it's thinner and it doesn't cover quite as well. But I'd rather have that.
So it's not paint thinner, it's thinner paint.
Correct.
Right.
It's water-based, so there is no paint thinner involved. Clean up with water. It's not oil-based.
But does it not rain? What of is made rain, if not water? Man.
It will rain, but it'll be dry before it rains.
So you can only clean up the paint with water when it's wet, which is ironic because you're making it more wet.
Otherwise, of course, it doesn't actually dry firm for 4 hours. So there's varying degrees of, just like the story I told you about paint drying. Remember that?
I dream about it. Twice a week.
It's worth repeating.
Okay, I'm going to go sit on the sofa, and I'll be back in a little bit.
But at any rate, what that means is while it comes off rather easily, immediately when it's still very wet, it'll continue to come off with varying degrees of scrubbing for the next several hours. And then when it dries to a certain point, you have to paint over it. It won't scrub clean. It dries too much. I could probably clean it up realistically, without any smudging, within 2 or 3 minutes. After that, it's hard to clean it up without leaving a smudge. But anyway, I had to do glazing. I had thought of a new way to do glazing, and before I tried it, I confirmed it with a YouTube guy who
must be true then
acted like it was his idea. No, he showed me in the video, which I already knew was helpful. But instead of using glaze, which takes 4 to 5 hours to harden, I instead used a really light weight spackling.
Yes, you mentioned that last time.
I did talk about that. Yeah. Well, anyway, so 8 to 10 hours per unit.
So glazing, like I Googled glazing, and my understanding of that word was sort of confirmed in that when I was in England 17 years ago, everyone, when we were buying houses and looking at houses and stuff, everyone was very pleased about their double glazing. Meaning that there was 2 panes of glass in the window with a little pocket of air,
yes,
I suppose. And our newest windows here are also, there's a little pocket of air in there. So double glazing, I guess in that case, it just means glazing means putting in a pane of glass.
Well, it's a unique use of the word. It's very descriptive on the face of it, because you are putting into, what is it, a 4-pane or a 6-pane or a 2-pane window?
Yeah.
Which is it? Yes,
4, 6, 8, man. There's like
you don't know.
I got so much pane, man.
How many squares are in your window? 2. I've got 2-pane windows here. How many pieces of glass with edges?
In the window that I'm thinking about now, 3.
3.
You weren't thinking about an odd number, were you?
I wasn't.
But there it is.
Which means there's 6 pieces of glass when it's double paned.
No, there's 3 pieces. Well, yes, 3. Yes.
And I don't call that double glazed. I call that double paned, but it's the same principle. But here on the face of it is this: for every piece of glass in there, you are double glazing. You're glazing twice. Because glazing not only refers to, I think this is a unique use of the word, but it actually also refers to putting the putty in that holds that pane of glass to the wood, using also push pins, which you may be familiar with. I've talked about them.
Yes.
That you push in,
Yes.
and then the glazing covers that. Glazing dries out, and when it dries out, it chips away from the wood and the glass, and sometimes it all falls out, which is sometimes easier when only part of it falls out, because when part of it falls out, it's in there like rock. And when you try to chip it out, which isn't recommended, you can slip and break the glass. So what you do instead is you put new glazing over the top of it. And in order to do that, you've got to increase the depth of the glazing. And if one of the 4 lines of the pane are thicker than the other 3 to a degree that's notable, it looks odd. So there's another way to fix a broken putty, a broken glaze. And I did that, which is to put a glob of it on my finger and just smooth it over with my finger until I was happy with it. If my finger was dry, I would get it slightly moist. I know,
Yeah, maybe.
I know.
So the double paned windows that I'm referring to are actually aluminum, not wood.
So they're not glazed at all in this case. There's no glazing in aluminum. They're sliding into.
Okay, sure. And then PVC, also not true. Also not glazed.
True. That's the plastic is white or whatever color. That's a good thing about plastic windows is if you scratch the window, because the vinyl that is used to make them, it's not actually plastic, but it's kind of a plastic, but the vinyl is all one color. Right. So if you take a chunk out of the window, it doesn't show very much because it's the same color underneath throughout that it is on the top.
Right. So we have just had done what I assume you would call glazing, where we had our local glacier, glass guy, I call him, come in and he redid so our kitchen door had 6 panes of glass that was sort of like blurred.
Opaque.
And opaque is wrong.
Was it warped?
It would. You could get the light through, but you couldn't see everything. And translucent is the word. Yes. But the missus requested clear glass, and
you were right the first time.
and so we had the local glass guy come in and in our wooden door put in clear glass, which whatever. That's the thing. Yeah. Well, it's nicer. It depends on. So her reasoning was, look, our kitchen door is right when you enter the apartment, and it's nice to get light or to know if the light is on in the kitchen from the door. But if it's totally clear, then any sort of mess that you have in the kitchen can be seen by any visitor or whatever. So there's that logic. I kind of liked the not totally crystal clear seeing through, but I was overruled. But
it was, in fact, required.
Indeed. But my main question to you is...
I didn't know there was a question coming. I'm all ears. Shoot.
How do you like your donuts? Single glazed or double glazed?
Actually, no glaze at all.
Wow.
Now, I also used to be a potter and used to put glazing on my pots.
Right.
And burn them in a glazing oven.
Used to burn pot,
and then the glaze melted into fantastic colors. Right. And I had then glazed pots. I gazed at them. I took them with me to the pasture and I grazed with them.
Yes. Did you?
And then to celebrate Elvis's birthday, I went to Graceland.
But you didn't blaze some pot?
No. Nope. Wrong again.
Okay. Very, very good. That's interesting news. So
Westworld is over. Westworld is over. So if you ever were, I thought you were going to...
It's all the way over. Like done?
It's not been, to my knowledge, it's not been re-upped. But boy, did they leave it so that it might be.
Don't they all?
Well, smart.
Well, maybe Eastworld is a spinoff.
Well, they had, well, you don't know, but they had many worlds. It wasn't just Westworld.
Okay, well, I don't care.
There was an Asian world. It was called
not
Shogun
Eastworld?
Land or
I vaguely
Shogun World or
yeah.
So,
I am also mourning the death of a series. Better Call Saul.
I never did catch it, but I've read so much about it.
But you haven't seen Breaking Bad either,
right?
So
does one precede the other?
The irony of that question is fantastic. So Breaking Bad came out first, and because Breaking Bad was so good, they were able to make a spin-off called Better Call Saul that is a prequel. And so they had this amazing, like, what a corner to paint yourself in as a drama writer, to say, okay, we're going to write this, we're going to show how this character that you know from this show was created. And all the characters, like, there were some characters that were just like a throw off line in Breaking Bad where Saul said, oh, did Lalo sent you? And that was like not a thing that was a thing at all. That was just a throw off line. But then they like created this whole storyline behind this character that was just a brief mention.
And of course, not knowing at the time when they did, it was
exactly
a throwaway line.
Exactly. It was a throwaway line.
That's the creative process working backwards. That's fascinating.
Exactly. And so they built this thing that was like destined, like it had to finish up. Like there were characters that you knew couldn't be killed because they appeared later. And it was a really fascinating process. And I've been listening to a podcast where like after every episode, they talk like for an hour, the creators of the show, about like how they made that episode, which is super fascinating. I would love more of that from other
now, do you watch the post-show notes for Barry, for example?
See, I don't get those.
That's weird.
Yeah, you have them via your HBO or whatever, but I don't, because I have a different HBO via Spain, and they just have paid for part of it or whatever.
Right.
So that's interesting. I would love that stuff. But
well, what's always and no spoiler here because you recognize it, but what is the case is the degree to which when they're writing an episode, they really don't have any plan whatsoever about what's going to happen next, because they're not sure. The only thing they know is they wanted to get this episode done.
Right.
And what happens next is and sometimes they might have one or two general storylines that they're going to weave their way through. So there's a beginning, middle, and an end of the season. But how they say, when we listen to that episode again, and what my co-producer, my co-writer, whoever it is in this case, what Bill wrote was so wonderful that we just decided to run with it. We had no idea at the time we were going to.
Exactly.
But we ran with it, and because of that, we created this entire storyline, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, the Better Call Saul people do the same thing, where, but they have stories where like a particular actor that was going to be just a throwaway person just fucking killed it. And then they were like, well, we need to see more of this character. Let's write more of this character. And some of the characters that finished and were the most important ones in Better Call Saul were ones that were booked for 1 or 2 episodes, where they were just like, we need a character as a foil for the main character or whatever.
Same actors?
Oh yeah. Like if the actor really crushes it, then they look for a way to write that person back in. And
so the Better Call Saul is not so preliminary to Breaking Bad that you don't have to show an adult in Breaking Bad who's a teenager in Better Call Saul. The proximity of the years is closer.
True. Great question. When they do have, aside from the main character, Saul, almost none of the characters that were later in Breaking Bad are in Better Call Saul. Towards the end, they did a little bit of overlap where they had the primary characters of Breaking Bad appear in Better Call Saul, and they told me they mentioned in the podcast that those were recorded like normally they write and shoot and write and shoot and write and shoot, but these particular cameos from the stars of Breaking Bad were booked like almost a year earlier, so they like had to write sort of what that cameo would look like in episode Far Away From Now, and they shot that, and then they could sort of tie that in. But no, almost none of the characters overlap, and they do. I mean, Hollywood makeup, man, it's magical. They can make you look 10 years younger, 10 years older. And one clever thing that I appreciate is towards the end where they were getting up to like the seam where they had to break from here to the known universe. They did this trick where they jumped to in front, like to ahead, to after the Breaking Bad universe. So
really,
they did this with they went from color to black and white. So the super future is black and white.
Which is
the normal Better Call Saul time is in color, and then the future after Breaking Bad happened is in black and white.
The true sequel.
Writing the sequel because
it could be
because they needed to show where this character that they had spun off from ended up in the future to make it satisfying.
Make it make sense.
So anyway, it was amazing. I think they fucking nailed it. And
so Better Call Saul just ended. That was the end. Yes. So now you've got how many seasons were there? 3?
6.
6. Wow.
Yeah.
How many per? 7, 8, 10?
This last episode was season 6, episode 13. So a dozen.
Man.
But it was so, and setting that goal of like, I think I've mentioned this here before, but whatever. It's sort of like Apollo 13, the movie.
Yeah.
It's like history has written what has happened, right? And so how do we make that dramatic? Like maybe they won't make it back. And how they were able to do that and make it excruciating, like that's just good writing.
Which mean what it means is that they focus on people's emotions,
right? Of course,
and it wasn't about what was happening as much as it was about what people were feeling. I mean, that iconic scene when he dumps a box of materials on the desk.
That's so fucking good. That's the best scene
and
of
here
much
it is.
Cinema.
You have to make it work with just this.
Yep, that's so
2
good.
hours.
That's one of the best. That's probably the best engineering scenes in all of cinema. Like whether or not that happened, who knows? But as a scene, fantastic.
Yeah. Well, so how many seasons was Breaking Bad?
7 or 8, I think.
And how many per for that? So probably 8.
Breaking Bad episodes.
64 and 80. So 144.
Only 5 seasons.
5. So,
but they were, let's see, number overall, 62 in total.
So that's 142 between the two of them. That's 142 hours of viewing.
Yes.
So if I went to Netflix, I would have my work cut out for me for about the next year.
Okay, I think Breaking Bad is available on Netflix.
And what have we heard about the old man? Any noise out there about a second season? I'm sure there will be. I hope it's not on.
Although I heard that the creators heard our last episode where I didn't really know what the fuck was going on, and so they've decided to do another one. So I can fucking.
They're gonna repeat the climax just for you.
Yes, previously on for you dumb fucks.
Oh
yes.
Lord, yeah, I was a bit taken back. I thought, well, he must have binged like several episodes one night and was semi-comatose by the time the climax came.
I mean, that's not entirely false, but yes.
Yeah. Well, so there's a limit to how much you can absorb, but the main point, one would think you would.
But to be clear, and like the people on the Better Call Saul podcast talked about this. Breaking Bad is probably some of the best television in the last 20 years.
I've seen some of the best.
It's really, really good. And I think most of it is on Netflix. Better Call Saul, the first few seasons are on Netflix, but not the latest because they want to like sell to their vendors on AMC. But the it's pretty darn good. So our painters are done. They said, "Hey, is there anything else we can help out with?" And I was like, "I got a list of like 4 or 5 things here that I would rather you do than me." And so like they drilled a hole through some ceramic tile and hung a whiteboard in the kitchen, and some other stuff that's
smart.
It would have been difficult for me, but for them, like, so as an example, our whiteboard, typical whiteboard with a wooden border, and there were, those little eye hole screw things that you do to like put into hooks. Mm-hmm. I had put in like extra of those because I had attempted to attach it to the wall with like suction cups. So there were like 4 little hooks, and but that had failed because we woke up several mornings and the thing was on the floor. And so I said, hey man, can you like screw this in? And I said, you don't need to use all 4 of these. And he was like, I'm not gonna use any of these. I'm not gonna put the eye holes I'm not gonna put the hooks at the top. I'm gonna put them along the side so you don't see the hook shooting up from the top. Right. Like duh. And I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, do that. And so he did it fucking perfectly. Right. Like these things that are so like difficult, they wouldn't occur to me, are so obvious to someone that does that. In the same way that if this guy wanted a website, I'd be like, no, don't do what your first 7 ideas are. I'll tell you what to do.
Well, what's funny is that there are these really quick YouTube videos, really quick, where a guy who's a handyman is showing you in rapid order 5 or 6 unique things, how to hang wire using clips. Right. And one thing, that he did was he took a plastic pipe, PVC pipe that was about 4 inches through it, 4 inches tall, so as you say, not circumference, but diameter. Mm-hmm. And he cut a piece of it, and then he cut an edge off of it so that you could like pull it open a little bit. It was like a mm-hmm. sleeve that could open a little bit. And then he used these long screws, really long, like 8 inches, and Damn. Drilled the screws into the plastic so that when you open the screws, the plastic opened and you created a small vise.
Right. Sure.
A gripper.
Yeah.
And the pipe was incredibly strong. The grips were incredibly strong. And because he inserted the screw mm-hmm. through 2 pieces of plastic, it was totally immobile.
Right.
And I thought, and he did it in like 10 minutes.
Man, I have a soft spot for YouTube shop porn like that. It's don't get me started on watching lathes, man.
Are you kidding me?
Lathes are so fucking sexy
for hours.
Yeah.
I watched the big giant ones with the trees on them, and I saw one the other day which was a root. So they put a root on there, and where the root was rotted out, they ended up using black epoxy. Yeah. And put the epoxy in the place and turned it into a vase.
There's so much good shit on YouTube. Yes.
I can't believe we share that. I don't know.
I can watch. I have to stop myself from going further on that. There are some that like where they take epoxy and they glue a bunch of colored pencils together, and then they like lathe that into a thing. Yeah. And it's just like, God, it's so satisfying to watch.
The other thing I do, which I wonder if you do too, is that I watch these painstaking restorations of like an antique vise, right. Or completely rusted, corroded, or one of my favorites was an antique anvil, a working anvil that opened and closed, and nothing worked. It was completely frozen. Building screws and drilling new holes and using electrical stuff to free stuff up. And do you watch those?
Not those in particular. The other day, I really almost sent you this, and I almost said, "Tool of the day, haha." It's this guy about my age who, I guess he's trying to sell these eventually, but he's a welder, and he talked about all the problems with existing like work tables, and he talked about how some of them don't have wheels, so you can't wheel them around the shop, and some of them aren't exactly flat, and when you're welding, you want to be able to clamp stuff down for a while, and so you want to be able to clamp stuff like in the middle of the table, and for that you need a table full of holes, and you need it depends on the type of hole that you want to
build a table.
And so he built a fucking table, and
I would watch that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and he made it like he wanted it to be perfectly flat, such that you couldn't fit if you put a flat thing on top of it, you couldn't fit a little tiny sliver of anything underneath it. And so he basically reviewed all of the existing products on the market and and said, I want to do at least as good or better on these 5 measures. Yeah. So I want it to be at least as flat as the flattest one I could find. I want it to be at least as mobile as the mobile one I could find. I want it to be the right size, because if it's too small, then you can't, then it's, the smallest ones, the typical thing that you put on it is exactly the same size, and that sucks. But also you don't want it too big, because you want to be able to reach across it to get a tool. And he went through all of this rationalization about why he made all these decisions, and it was just mesmerizing to watch. It was just like, damn, I wish I needed, well, okay, so to be honest, in my line of work, I'm super lucky in that I can, in the same way that this guy did, I can build tools to help me do the job that I want to do. Like most people can't, but I am using tools that I also know how to build, so I can like build tools that make my life easier. It's just a beautiful place to be in. But anyway,
that's why you get standing ovations when you speak.
Well, I mean, I do stand and I do ovate, so
right.
I'm ovating right now.
You're in dangerous territory. Hey. So I remember back in episode, I want to say 63, I said that Trump would only leave office when he committed suicide. And little did I know then that the preceding event, which would cause that suicide, was him being found out that he was in fact a secret agent and practicing espionage for Russia. And
dun dun dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Here we go.
Yeah, but not that he'd be good at anything, but being a secret agent for Russia means not leaving shit at Mar-a-Lago. It means like delivering it to the agents.
This is his mistake. This is one of the first times he didn't do what Putin told him to do and how he told him to do it. This is one he thought, I'm on the way out. I better grab this stuff because I think Putin may want it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sloppily done. And little did he know
that
Putin would be Putin.
Inefficiency by
Donald?
Little
did he know that Putin would be, shall we say, just a bit engaged with a little tiny war that was supposed to take just a few weeks.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah.
Oh, Lordy.
Well, there's that.
So I have
Hold on. Before we leave politics, what about the Cheney Dynasty?
Oh, yeah.
And
right.
How she's clearly, she seems so likely at the moment to be the first female president.
Well, she doesn't have a chance to win the primary. And
the primary against Trump?
Yes.
It has to be a third party. Yeah.
Well, the third party is a non-starter. Doesn't matter.
That's true.
It's a non-starter.
So Trump has to die first.
No, her job, as she says it, is to make sure Trump isn't elected president. She's not going to do that by running and beating him. She's going to do that by doing a million other things and being incredibly well-funded to be able to do it.
Right.
Because she is, in fact, now the face of was the old, must now be the new truly conservative Republican Party.
Indeed, yes.
So now what's great about this for her is that there's no doubt that she's the leader.
Yep.
There's no doubt. There's nobody who's contending with her as a leader of the used to be old and now is the new conservative Republican Party. And because of that, and because of her father, who's no fucking slouch in the corporate world, the poor woman is going to be making so much money that she's going to say, this ain't so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because what she will be doing is she will be creating what the Democrats will say in an objective setting is what they refer to as the loyal opposition. Because in order for any party of standing to be at its best and to be always pointed toward the future in the right direction, it does need, in fact, a loyal opposition who will push it and force it and use their leverage to suggest even better ideas. And so each of the two groups vies for a better position, but they each do it in something that Trump doesn't have, a Trump world doesn't have, which is loyalty. Loyalty to what? Well, loyalty to the United States Constitution and democracy of the United States as we know it. Trump world, including Tucker Carlson, has every intention of putting forth a vision of replacing democracy with an aristocracy. And they want to use Bulgaria as the model. We've talked about this. I've talked about it at any rate. And you hear now in this morning's news, in Morning Joe, where he didn't name one of the oldest friends he has in the Republican Party, who he's known forever, who was a Reagan Republican conservative, just like Joe Scarborough. And he said, Joe, we can replace our form of government.
Yep.
We can replace our form of government. And that's where they're headed. Their false hubris is misunderstanding that their violent, misguided, and flawed approach to bring down democracy shouldn't be something that buoys them and say, "Oh, we almost did it." No, they didn't. They were stopped dead cold in their tracks, regardless of using incredibly powerful tools
Obnoxious
and approaches with armed insurrection. Mussolini. I mean, now you should post the images of Trump and Mussolini that we talked about in episode 63 that are unbelievable. The same poses.
Sure.
The same poses. So don't get me started.
Yeah, I'm sorry I did.
Well, now you make me feel bad.
No, yeah, we need to get back to that when so I saw a news article today where so in the rest of Western democracies, we hold election day on a Sunday because fewer people are working. You don't have to take off work. You don't have to destroy the economy for one day to have people get off and vote.
And you have a day off before then.
Well, and then we have in Spain we have the day of reflection, to where no one is allowed to campaign, and the citizens are allowed to just sit and think. Although, really, come on, people already know who they're going to vote for.
Well, that's not always the case.
Yeah. Okay. But I saw a news article today where in America they're taking the bold step of they've canceled all the NBA games on election day.
Yeah.
So that people won't be distracted.
Yeah.
And I was just like, fuck, man. What? This is as good as we can do, but whatever.
Well, baby step is the first step, but yeah. It's amazing how little we actually care about people being able to vote. It's the Republican control. The more people who vote, the less Republicans are voted for. So
exactly,
their survival is clearly based on elimination and confusion. Right. Suppression.
FUD. Do you know that word? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD. That's what
FUD?
Yeah. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Wow.
Is what you spread when there's a thing that is threatening your organization. Is you try and get people to be afraid and uncertain and doubting their news sources.
Man, that's a T-shirt in the making right there, my man.
Yeah, man. FUD.
That's
man.
On the front. FUD.
Yeah.
It's on the back in big words.
FUD you,
Fear,
motherfucker.
Uncertainty, and what's the third? D.
Dog. No, doubt.
I doubt it. FUD. Hey, so I have some fun to report to you.
Fun.
So
it's better than FUD.
You know that I've talked about my friend Tom Dunfield, the piano player.
Yes.
Who was playing at O'Duffy's, and have I talked to you since I went down there and played with him, and then another harmonica player showed up?
No. Do tell.
So
all ears.
There's hardly anybody there, and my buddy Tom is there, sets up his electric piano, and he introduces me to a guy named Steve, who ends up being Steve from none other than, I learned much later, the Steve Pesci Band, which is a band I heard in about 2017, 2018.
Steve Pesci, yeah.
And he introduces him as a guitar player, and I erroneously assumed that he's got his guitar with him, and he's going to play with Tom. Because the last time I was there, Tom had a guitar player named Jack. And Jack was great, and it was nice to have a piano and electric guitar. So Tom started playing, as Tom would, and some blues tunes, and we just loved to listen to him. I had my harps and had them set up, waiting for when Tom, called on me, because it's his show. And Steve's got no guitar in sight, and I assume it's in the car. And we get to about the third tune, and I said to Steve, man, you got to get your guitar. And he said, yeah, I should have brought it.
Wait, he's an air guitar player.
But there was no guitar even played. It was a piano. That's all there was.
Okay.
Oh, and I said, I thought you had it out in the car, blah, blah, blah. And then and Tom says, why don't you help me out here, Dennis? So I pulled out my harp, and we started playing a duet. And it didn't take long before old Steve, as he was hearing in the melodies that Tom was meandering through bluesy tunes, and he just plays and plays. I mean,
Sure.
And picks it up sometimes or that. And sometimes actually this, because there's people in the audience, he actually does end it at a certain point.
Oh, that's
but
nice.
Steve starts singing.
Unlike this podcast.
To no endings.
Or the story. Continue.
I'm in no hurry. We have nowhere to go. And Steve starts singing, and as he sings, he laughs and he says, that sounds a little bit like, and he sings a Johnny Cash song, or he sings a Waylon Jennings song, or whatever. And as he starts to sing it, then Tom says, yeah, you're right. And then he starts to play that tune. And so that's how we started playing.
God, I hate musicians like that so much.
And so there's the three of us, and Steve has a great voice. And so I because I played with Tom some, I said, Tom, I want to sing. Let me sing Summertime. And I said, Steve, why don't you sing it? You got such a good voice. I said, you know it? And he says, well, yeah, I know it. I said, you know to sing it? And he said, well, I don't know to sing it. And as Tom was playing it, Steve was looking at the sheet music, or the words that I had printed, with an absolute uncertainty. Right. Absolutely uncertainty. And I said, do you not feel comfortable doing this? There are a few people in the audience. And he said, I really don't. I said, well, why don't I start with the first verse, and then I'll turn it over to you for the second verse, and you give it back to me for the third. He says, you're on, man. Let's do it. And so Tom says, I'm coming around one more time. And he starts tinkling the keys. And I come and Summertime. And I sing it, clear and nicely, I must say. And Steve looks at me and says, holy shit, I got you. So when it came to the second verse, I turned it over to him, and he, of course, has a powerful voice, and he picked up it nicely, and then he turned it back to me for the third one, and we did that, and then shows up. This is 40 minutes into the first 2 hours. In shows Kenny, who's a harmonica player I've talked about, who shows up at the Old Dog for open mic night,
right,
and he's rambunctious and he loves the blues and he's a good guy, but as it turns out, he brings in his amp, sets up, there's three of us in this little place that holds like 12 people.
Amp people, am I right?
6 tables, and mics up and begins to not just play responsive with the talent, who's Tom, on the piano.
Oh no.
And instead starts playing the harmonica nonstop. Ugh. Just playing, and you can barely hear the piano. And I just sat.
What's wrong with these people, man?
I just listened the best I could. And at one point, Tom, who's looking a little frustrated, looks at me and says, "This tune's in the key of C," as if to say to me, and also to Kenny, who's had to be listening, that he wanted me to play. And I thought, well, undoubtedly I will be sharing the stage with the man who's now standing here with his mic'd up, with his mic tuned up too loud.
Yep.
And so I grab it as instructed. I grabbed it to the right harmonica, the F harmonica, to play it in the key of C. and Kenny just plays louder and more furiously. And I just gave Tom a look and start, I waited and listened, and then kind of quickly, put my stuff together.
It sounds a bit like what's going to happen on this story here, where I'm going to just play louder and talk louder than you, and then everything is just going to go to me because I'm the more important person, and I don't really want to hear any more from you because I'm going to talk louder.
And then Steve, while I'm packing up and I leave and say something, my wife called, time for dinner, whatever, which was partly true. Steve packed up and left too. We had a laugh about it, but here's the point of the story. That's just to say this.
Don't be a dick.
I said to Steve before he left, I said, so where, you got a band? He said, yeah, I got a band. I got a full band. Plus I play with a guy, another guitar player. And I said, well, where do you play? And he said, well, the big band hardly plays at all anymore. It's so hard to book. We keep losing our drummer. But me and Nathan, we're playing out at Zeb's, and we play here, we play there. And I said, what do you play? And he said, well, we play some blues and some country and this. And I said, oh man. And when we were playing, he was singing some country, and he said to me, I love that harmonica with these cowboy. I said, with the cowboy tunes is what I call.
Sure.
And I said, oh great. And he said, yeah, you ought to join us sometime. And I said, well, I'd love to. So he left, and I wrote him the next day, which was a weekend, and said, where are you playing? And he said, well, I'm playing at Zeb's. And he called. Instead, I wrote him, texted him, and instead of texting me, he called me, and he said, I was surprised to hear from you. He said, I'm playing at Zeb's tonight. Can you show up? And I said, yeah. I said, well, bring your stuff. We'll have some fun. So I did, and I ended up playing like the entire second set, half the tunes in the first set, and just had a hell of a time with these two guys, and played and that. And we were out at a place called Zeb's out at Texas Corners. And that, my friend, is the point of the story. The other part was just a prelude that you found laborious and time-consuming. But
the finale was not laborious nor time-consuming.
No, and I've just had a great time. And tonight I'm going to a place that is newly opened, which is surprising what their tagline is since they're newly open. But it's called Liquid Note.
Whoa.
And it's a brewery, and all the beer that they brew is described as if it's a musician or a piece of music. And so the analogies are all about music and beer. And this place has got music like Wednesday, which is open mic night, which is where I'm headed tonight. Wednesday through Sunday is music, but their tagline is the premier blues brewery in mid-Michigan. Yeah. It's like, well, wait a minute.
Okay.
We just opened up. Who said so?
So they have like staccato stout, and
I would imagine that the stout would be like
smooth jazz lager.
No, it's more bluesy, and I think like it, or maybe some country, but it could be like Folsom Prison Porter.
Ugh. I'm so like, I understand that there's a need for this, and I love wordplay more than anyone.
Well, that's not true, because if you did, you wouldn't be saying what you're about to say. But go on.
But the need to
be cute,
and every single, like, you can't just go to a bar in the States anymore and get
a beer.
A beer. Yeah, that's what I love about Smittix, for example, is that it's what I consider beer, and the other stuff is just like red, rosemary, raspberry, blah blah blah,
cider. Yeah, well,
yeah, and it's just like, come on, like do you really have to put all of this different shit into your brew cycle to be unique? And I know lots of people that are like, oh, I love all the sweet stuff. Give me the blackberry blues, syrup bullshit lager. But I don't know.
Well, my read on that is that it's a creative process that produces unique. They're looking for unique. But know this, that almost every brewery I go to has brewed their version of a red or amber ale. And almost without exception, they're not only very good, but they're also very different. And so in the strain of lagers and porters and stouts,
sure,
and whatnot, there's that creative niche. But then there's the new stuff, which is infused.
Right.
I'm not
fruity bullshit.
But a lot of people are, because they grew up on fucking Coca-Cola.
Right. So my question is, so 20 years ago, when you went to a bar, there was fucking Budweiser and
Miller.
That's it. Miller.
No, there were three. There's three kinds.
Okay. So, but they were all lagers. Like, if a taste test, you might be able to distinguish. But my question is, 20 years from now, is it going to be more diverse, or are we going to converge again on, no, these are the things that people actually like?
Let me answer that question by giving you an image. I'm sitting at a new restaurant. I'm sitting at the bar. It's happy hour. It's a great happy hour. Draft beer is $4. All the appetizers in this 4-star, 5-star restaurant are half price.
Yeah,
it's
baby.
a great time.
Happyhour.fm.
I'm sitting at the bar. I'm watching the bartender, and the bartender comes and he makes a mixed drink. She makes a mixed drink, and then she takes this little machine that she has next to her, and she pulls what looks to be a tiny little plastic gun. And when she pulls the trigger of the gun, a bubble appears on the end of it, and the bubble is in fact sweet and it's edible. And she puts it over the top of the glass.
Yes.
So that the glass is domed in a bubble.
I see it.
And inside the bubble, from the mixture of liquor and ice that she put in, is what looks to be fog.
And
she serves it that way. And when somebody puts their straw into it, maybe the straw was already inserted into it and the bubble was built around it. Mm-hmm. That was pretty new shit to me. There may be the same, but instead of the bubble, it puts you in a mental experience,
in a vapor,
because when you grasp the glass of the beer bottle, or the draft glass, the glass of the draft,
yes,
it creates a connection with you that goes to your brain and puts you in a different spot, in a different world, in a different country, a different place. So the beer is the same, but it's you that's different. That's my prediction for the future.
Wow.
I'm so glad you asked.
It's like they say that the same man never steps in the same river twice, because it's never the same river, it's never the same man.
Oh.
The same man never drinks the same beer twice.
Wow, that's right.
It's never the same beer, it's never the same man.
That's right.
Whoa.
It's never the same podcast. So number 158, huh? How are the donations going? Are we rolling in the green?
I mean, look, I'm a little disappointed about the color of my 6th Tesla, but
yeah,
it charges and it drives.
Yeah. Hey, is the one dude who was giving us money every month still giving us money?
He is, and I love him for it.
Shout out to him, man. Shout out to him. We got access to his bank account. Is there anything we can do to get more money from him? I mean, go into his bank account and take it or whatever. I mean, he's loyal.
No. Yeah.
What does loyal mean anymore?
I mean, I don't think he listens. So, Yakin, good luck in the Arctic Circle. He lives in the Arctic Circle.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So like he had like 100 days of sunlight or whatever recently in the summer. It's just like, what, man? What? So anyway.
I'm on my way to Liquid Note, my man.
All right. Well, don't drink all your notes and don't piss all your phrases.
Well, I've drank enough beer that I got to piss. And I know something. I know this. When I piss, it will be all clear as a bell, because this beer I'm drinking tastes just like hell. Well, it's grapefruit infused and it's infested with sugar and I hate it. I just hope don't get bitter, and I hate what I'm drinking. Oh, what could they be thinking? Can't you just order a beer?
Or a porter.
Or a stout. Or a lager. Or an ale. Hey, to your point, though, back in the day, 20 years ago, in fact, further deeper than that, my great uncle, who you've heard, was the brewmaster, and he was putting out a darker beer, a lager, and a Christmas ale. And the Christmas ale had ambiance of red ale. So even back then, it wasn't just beer as beer. Of course, that place, it was in business for, when was in business? Maybe 50 years, but it didn't last.
Nothing lasts, man. Just like this episode, man. Okay, that does it for episode number 158. You can find the show notes at happyhour.fm/158. There are not too many this week, but that video of the guy making the amazing table is worth your time. You can support the show at patreon.com/happyhour, and just be a good person. Try and help somebody. We'll see you next week.